My name is Evelyn Carter, and I'm 56 years old. If you'd asked me a year ago what I was most proud of, I wouldn't have mentioned my business, my home, or the comfortable life I'd built. I would have said my daughter, Madison. I lost my husband to cancer when Madison was just 12. From that day on, every decision I made revolved around giving her the future her father and I had dreamed of. I worked long hours, built a successful interior design company, and never complained because every sacrifice felt worth it whenever I saw her smile. She graduated from a private university without student loans. I surprised her with a Mercedes after graduation, helped with the down payment on her first house, and never let her feel alone when life became difficult. For years, she thanked me for everything. Then she met Ryan. At first, I thought he simply made her happy. He was charming, confident, and always knew exactly what to say. But little by little, I noticed changes. Madison stopped calling every evening. Family dinners became excuses. When we did talk, she sounded impatient, as though spending time with me had become another obligation on her calendar. Then came the small comments. "You don't have to worry about me anymore, Mom. Ryan thinks I should make my own decisions." None of those words sounded cruel by themselves, but together they built a wall between us. A week before her birthday, she finally called. "I'd love for you to come," she said, her voice unusually formal. "But Ryan thinks it'd be better if you don't make a scene or mention helping me financially. I just want everyone to see me as independent." I smiled through the silence and told her I'd be there. Deep down, though, something told me this birthday wouldn't be a celebration. It would be a turning point. A Madison's birthday dinner was held at an upscale rooftop restaurant overlooking the city skyline. I'd reserved the evening weeks earlier, hoping it would be the beginning of repairing whatever distance had grown between us. In my hands was a carefully wrapped gift I'd spent months planning, something personal rather than expensive. When I arrived, Madison greeted me with a quick hug that felt more polite than warm. "You made it," she said with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Ryan shook my hand instead of offering the familiar hug he'd always given me before. "Glad you could come, Evelyn." Dinner started pleasantly enough. Everyone laughed, shared stories, and toasted Madison's 29 years. I stayed quiet, letting her enjoy the spotlight. That's exactly what I'd come for. Then Ryan leaned back in his chair and chuckled. "You know," he said, lifting his glass, "one of the hardest parts of becoming an adult is convincing parents that it's time to stop treating you like a child." Several people laughed. Madison laughed too. A few minutes later, one of her friends glanced toward the restaurant entrance where my silver Mercedes was parked. "So, Maddie," she joked, "when are you finally taking that beautiful Mercedes on a road trip?" Madison smiled proudly. "It's basically mine anyway." I answered gently, not wanting to embarrass her. "Actually, sweetheart, it's still registered in my name." The smile disappeared from her face. Before I could say another word, she pushed her chair back. "You always do this," she snapped loudly. Every conversation around us stopped. "You always have to remind everyone that you paid for something." I stared at her, speechless. Then came the words that shattered 29 years of motherhood. "I wish you'd never been my mother." The room fell completely silent. I looked around the table. No one spoke. No one asked her to take it back. I quietly reached into my purse, placed the spare Mercedes key beside her birthday plate, and smiled. "Happy birthday, Madison." Then I walked away without looking back. I had no idea that 3 days later, everything would change. The next 3 days were surprisingly quiet. Madison never called. Instead, my phone filled with short, demanding text messages. "Bring the Mercedes back. You're embarrassing me. If you don't return it today, I'll report it stolen." I never replied. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I knew that any conversation we had while emotions were running high would only make things worse. Instead, I spent those 3 days making decisions I should have made years earlier. I met with my attorney, gathered every receipt, title, and purchase record I had carefully kept over the years. The Mercedes was still registered in my name. So were several pieces of furniture, the dining room set, the artwork, and the guest room furnishings I'd purchased when Madison bought her first home. Every item had been a gift she was free to enjoy, but ownership had never legally changed. On the third morning, a licensed moving company pulled into her driveway. Two movers stepped out, followed by an assistant carrying a folder filled with inventory sheets and authorization forms. Everything was handled professionally. No raised voices. No arguments. Each item was checked against the paperwork before being carefully loaded into the truck. The Mercedes was driven away with its spare key. Nothing belonging to Madison was touched. Only the property that still legally belonged to me. Several neighbors watched quietly from their porches, whispering to one another as the truck slowly filled. About an hour later, my phone finally rang. Madison. The moment I answered, I heard panic instead of anger. Mom, what is happening? Why are they taking everything? I remained calm. They're only collecting what I still own. There was a long silence. For the first time in years, she wasn't arguing. She was counting the empty spaces in her house. Counting everything she'd always assumed would simply remain hers forever. Less than an hour later, another call came. This time, her voice was trembling. Mom, I'm coming over. I simply replied, I'll be home. Then I ended the call. Less than 30 minutes later, Madison's SUV pulled into my driveway so fast the tires barely stopped rolling before she jumped out. She rushed toward my front porch, tears already streaming down her face. Mom, please, she said. Can we talk? I was sitting in my favorite chair with a cup of coffee, watching the breeze move through the maple trees. I looked at her calmly. Sit down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, Why are you doing this to me? I folded my hands in my lap. I'm not doing anything to you, Madison. I'm simply taking responsibility for the things that still belong to me. She shook her head. You've taken everything. I looked directly into her eyes. No. I left you with exactly what no one can take from you, your ability to build a life of your own. She lowered her head. A long silence passed before she quietly admitted something I had suspected for months. It was Ryan. She wiped away another tear. He kept telling me that if I wanted people to respect me, I had to stop letting you be part of every decision. He said your help came with strings attached. He kept saying you'd never actually walk away because you loved me too much. I wasn't surprised. I do love you, I answered softly. But love without boundaries isn't kindness. It becomes permission. She began crying harder. I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't even recognize the person I've become. I believe you're sorry, I said. But trust isn't rebuilt because someone says the right words after causing pain. It's rebuilt through consistent choices. She nodded slowly. When she stood to leave, she looked smaller somehow. For the first time in years, she walked away carrying something far heavier than boxes. She was carrying the weight of her own decisions. 6 months passed. For the first time since she graduated college, Madison was paying every bill herself. She traded luxury for practicality, sold a few things she no longer needed, and bought a reliable used sedan with money she had earned. It wasn't flashy, but every payment reminded her that independence felt different when it was truly yours. Ryan didn't stay. Once the expensive lifestyle disappeared, so did the promises he'd made. Their engagement quietly ended a few weeks later. Madison never blamed anyone else. She accepted that she'd ignored the warning signs because they were easier than facing the truth. One Sunday afternoon, she knocked on my front door carrying a homemade apple pie. No special occasion, she said with a nervous smile. I just wanted to spend time with my mom. That afternoon, we talked for hours. Not about money, not about the past, just about life. Over the following months, our relationship slowly healed through simple routines, Sunday lunches, phone calls, and small acts of kindness. There were no expensive gifts, no financial favors, and no expectations. Only honesty and mutual respect. Looking back, I realized the greatest gift I ever gave my daughter wasn't a house, a Mercedes, or financial security. It was the chance to discover that real love isn't measured by what someone provides. It's measured by the respect two people choose to give each other, even after everything has been broken.